The sudden shock made the corner of Jung Tu's eye twitch, his heart nearly stopping. A second later, his whole body sprang into motion, bolting straight for the door. Fortunately, he had prepared in advance. The door was only pulled shut, not locked, and he hadn't bothered with the deadbolt or chain lock. That made opening it much faster. He burst into the hallway and sprinted madly down the hotel corridor, not daring to relax for a moment. Behind him came the sharp, rapid splashes of wet footsteps. It was chasing him again. Never in his life had Jung Tu run this fast. Wind roared past his ears. Whatever was behind him was fast, terrifyingly fast, the distance between them shrinking with each stride. And then, right in the middle of the chase, a chilling realization hit him. This hotel corridor was far too long. He'd been running for so long, yet there was still no end in sight. That thought snapped something awake in him. He began to notice more and more things that didn't make sense. At some point, a layer of thick, grayish mist had filled the hallway. Ahead, it was all hazy and dim, and the fog carried a stench so foul he couldn't describe it. And stranger still, he was making a huge commotion, yet the hallway was silent. Not a single sound from behind any of the doors lining the corridor. Could it be that behind those doors, everyone was dead? Just then, the thing behind him suddenly accelerated, as if it would slam into him in the very next second. The danger was imminent, but Jung Tu stopped abruptly. Instinct screamed at him. The fog ahead was moving unnaturally, swirling violently, as if hiding something. A moment later, his pupils shrank. At last, he could see it clearly. Looming at the end of the hallway was a massive, weathered mansion gate. It was the same gate from the script, the main entrance of the Feng family estate, exactly like the one on the invitation card. The gate stood over 3 meters tall, painted a dark, blood red. On either side, a thin bamboo pole held up a white lantern. A cold wind swept past, making the lantern sway, and the black calligraphy on their paper skin appeared and vanished through the mist. The splashing footsteps behind him stopped. Jung Tu gathered his courage and turned around. There was nothing there, only the warm, comforting glow of the overhead lights. When he looked forward again, the mist and the gate were gone. The corridor was clean and ordinary, faintly scented with disinfectant. Was it all an illusion? He felt dazed. His room door was still open, light spilling into the hallway. Now, he was barely 10 meters away, but in his memory he had run at least 100. There were no wet footprints, no water at all. Apart from his own memory, there was no evidence that something had been chasing him, just like what had happened back at the rental apartment. But Jung Tu knew it hadn't been an illusion. The gate at the end of the hall had radiated a very real, indescribable danger. And the purpose of whatever was chasing him was clear. It wanted to drive him through that gate. He was certain that, if he stepped inside, he would never return. That thing had latched onto him now. There was no escaping it. The only way forward was Fengmen Town. Gradually, sounds began to return to the hallway, like stolen human presence seeping back bit by bit. He could hear TV noise, and behind that, the occasional squeak of a bed frame shifting. The sounds were coming from right behind the door on his left. Everything about it felt disturbingly real. But instead of returning to his own room, Jung Tu stood still. He couldn't be sure if any of this was real or just another trap. Bang, bang, bang. He pounded on the door. The bed squeaking inside stopped instantly, replaced by the rustle of movement. A moment later, a man's guilty voice called from within. "Who's there? Who is it?" It sounded genuine, but Jung Tu didn't answer. He just banged harder. Bang, 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 bang. Coming, coming. "Officer, I swear, even though I've only known my girlfriend for 20 minutes, we truly love each other. Please believe me, I'm an honest man." Jung Tu gave the man a once-over, then glanced through the crack in the door before nodding apologetically. "Sorry, wrong room." The man froze for a second, then his expression twisted into a snarl. His lips moved. Jung Tu could read the curse clearly from his mouth. "Plainclothes cops are at the hotel entrance. They'll be here any second," Jung Tu murmured. The man instantly shut up, his eyes shifting strangely. After a moment, as if realizing something, he turned around, yelling at the woman inside to hurry up, while pulling out his wallet. He took out a red banknote and shoved it at Jung Tu. "Brother, your hotel's really considerate. I'll remember this place." When Jung Tu didn't move, the man seemed to understand. He pulled out 2 more bills and stuffed them into Jung Tu's pocket. "Go buy yourself a pack of Huazi cigarettes." Alright, this was definitely real. But even so, there was no way he was sleeping in his room tonight. Once the man and woman left, Jung Tu found the hotel's phone number on the booking site, came up with an excuse, and had a staff member come to his room. When they arrived, he packed up his things and returned to the first-floor lobby. Originally, the receptionist had intended to take the elevator, but Jung Tu claimed he had claustrophobia, so they all took the stairs instead. When the staff learned that all he wanted was to sit in the lobby overnight, they seemed a little surprised. They'd assumed he wanted to make a scene about checking out. "No, I'm not checking out. It's just too stuffy in the room. I don't like it," Jung-tu said casually. "Go ahead and do your work." He sat down on a long sofa. From his seat, he could see the female receptionist's counter directly ahead, and a bit further back, the night security desk. Through the hotel's glass doors, the city's night view was on display. Cars flowing past, store signs flashing. The sight gave him a faint sense of safety. Once he'd calmed his mind, Jung-tu slowly replayed everything that had just happened. In the reflection of his computer screen earlier, he'd clearly seen a woman. She had been drenched from head to toe, her dress disheveled, head bowed, long hair hanging to hide her face. Her thin body was hunched forward. He believed she couldn't harm him directly. Her goal was to force him toward that gate. The real killer was the gate itself. He was certain the woman was connected to Fengmen Town and to the old Feng family estate. At the same time, his mind leapt back to the strange incident at the abandoned flour mill. The faint, ghostly singing on that video, it sounded like a woman's voice too. Duong-chu stayed awake all night and only managed to doze off when dawn broke. Before sleeping, he had set his alarm and asked the pretty receptionist to wake him at the appointed time. To be honest, the sleep wasn't restful at all. He dreamt once again of that woman. Whether it was an omen or just fatigue, he didn't know. In the dream, Duong-chu was in the bathroom washing his face, standing directly in front of the mirror. As he lowered his head, he caught sight, reflected in the glass, of a disheveled-haired woman standing behind him, holding a knife in her hand. Startled awake, he realized it was already 9 a.m. Slinging his backpack over his shoulder, he grabbed a quick breakfast and then headed straight to the station. After waiting for over an hour, watching the crowds come and go, Duong-chu's tense mood gradually eased. The town of Fengmen didn't have its own train station. He had to disembark at the nearest stop and transfer to a bus. Because of the rains a few days prior, the roads were muddy, and the bus moved slowly. By the time he arrived, it was already 3 p.m. The smell of gasoline from the old-style bus made his head spin. It had been years since he last rode a vehicle like this, probably since he was a small child. As he walked through the town, everything around him seemed desolate. The streets were lined with aging shops that only half-heartedly opened. Some seemed completely deserted. The signs hanging outside were faded and old-fashioned. Contrary to what he had imagined, there weren't any tourists here. Occasionally, he would spot an elderly man selling food in a small alley. Following directions from his phone, Duong-chu located the former address of the Tanfong flour mill. There was no signboard. Clearly, the place had been torn down long ago. With the situation unclear, he didn't dare to enter recklessly. Instead, Duong-chu slowly walked around the perimeter wall, observing as he went. The post he had read wasn't wrong. The factory was in a prime location, fairly close to the town center. But aside from a few squat abandoned buildings nearby, everything else was overgrown and empty. It just didn't feel right. If there were no issues with this site, it wouldn't have been left to rot like this. He also noticed another odd thing. The outer wall of the factory was unusually high and seemed to have been built in stages. Some damaged sections clearly showed signs of repair, likely done decades ago. After circling the area, the sun had already begun to dip westward. Duong-chu knew he couldn't wait any longer. Who knew what might happen after dark? He found a slightly lower spot in the wall, stacked nearby stones to give himself a boost, and climbed up. After observing for a few seconds and seeing nothing unusual, he jumped down. Not far from where he landed stood a large workshop building. Its walls were scorched black with signs of fire damage. Getting closer, he saw the inside was nearly empty, as if it had been cleared out. The floor still bore holes from machinery installations, and rusted metal frames were scattered in the corners, unrecognizable in function. Going deeper inside, the ground transitioned into cobbled stone. Nearby stood fragments of crumbling brick walls, made from large blue-gray mountain stones. After a careful look, Duong-chu finally understood. This flour mill had been built atop an old mansion. It seemed that when the factory was constructed, more than half of the original mansion had been demolished. Involuntarily, he recalled the Feng family mansion, mentioned in the script. If nothing went wrong, this should be the place. Between two workshop buildings was a stone well encircled with debris. Its mouth looked small, and a large rock was pressed on top. Duong-chu took a closer look and quickly sensed something off. The rock on the wellhead had been carved into a rough shape resembling a human head, broad forehead, wide face, narrow eyes, long eyebrows. It strongly resembled a crude bodhisattva statue. He took out his phone and pointed it toward the well, intending to take a closer look. Suddenly, a sharp voice shouted from behind him. "Who's there?" About 10 meters away, a burly middle-aged man was striding over. He had a fierce look, leopard-like eyes, a bristly beard, and wore a security uniform with a baton strapped to his waist. I said, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Seeing the phone in Duong Tu's hand, the man became even angrier. "Here to film one of those damn videos again. Huh? You young people really have a death wish, don't you? Fame's gotten to your head." Duong Tu quickly realized the man had mistaken him for some ghost hunting blogger. "Take it easy. I'm just passing by and got curious." He pulled a red banknote from his pocket and approached with a smile. "Come on, bro. Just let me take a few pictures and I'll be out of here." The guard glared, clearly unmoved. "Leave. Now." With no other choice, Duong Tu had to retreat. He hadn't expected the factory to still have someone guarding it. Since night was falling, he couldn't go back in. So he wandered into the town, planning to ask around for more information. He checked his phone again, but, disappointingly, the person who had posted the original thread still hadn't replied. Rain began to fall gently. Duong Tu quickened his pace. The streets were nearly empty, typical of remote mountain towns. Most young people had long gone off to big cities for work. Those who remained were elderly locals and children too inconvenient to take along. Turning a corner, he saw an old man sheltering under a rooftop, with a few wrapped food bundles in front of him. The elder's hair was completely white, deep wrinkles carved into his face. His clothes were old but bore strong ethnic flair, clearly someone who had lived here a long time. Duong Tu jogged over through the drizzle and stood beside him. The old man's gaze was deep, as though he had seen through all of life's bitterness, a kind of clarity only mountain folk possess. "Hello, sir." The old man barely flicked his eyelids and gave a faint shake of the head, seemingly uninterested in worldly matters. "Sir, are you selling these?" "Selling?" The old man suddenly turned, his expression softening. $3 a bag. Take whatever you like." Duong Tu smiled and asked, "I'll take them all, but could you tell me something about Tan Fong Flour Mill No. 2? Was there once a big house there?" At the mention of Tan Fong No. 2, the old man's gaze turned wary. But as soon as Duong Tu pulled out a 20 yuan note, that look vanished. The elder launched into a long-winded monologue in a thick dialect, rambling for over 10 minutes. Unfortunately, it was all hearsay and folklore, far less helpful than the post. Still, he confirmed one thing. The factory had indeed been built atop a grand old mansion, but the building had collapsed long ago and wasn't directly connected to the factory itself. With no new leads, Duong Tu prepared to leave. The old man, now in a good mood after being paid, lit a dry tobacco roll and sat cross-legged, smacking his lips. "Tell me something, young man. Why are you city folks suddenly so curious about the old factory?" Duong Tu paused in surprise. "You mean, someone else came asking too?" "This afternoon." The old man tapped his yellowed pipe. After asking, he headed straight for the factory. "But the place has a guard. Outsiders aren't allowed in." The old man chuckled, clearly amused. "Don't be silly. That place has been abandoned for decades. We locals won't even go near it." "What guard?" "Young man, you think there's really a guard?" A chill ran down Duong Tu's spine. "No guard? Are you sure, sir?" The old man shook his head, unwilling to say more. After a while, Duong Tu began to piece it together. The guard he met had no local accent at all. "Sir, what did the other guy asking about the factory look like?" Duong Tu pulled out another red note. The old man's eyes lit up and he snatched it away. Let me think. Yes, a man. Beard, round face, sharp eyes, fierce looking. His gaze didn't feel human." Duong Tu drew a sharp breath. That description matched the guard perfectly. Whoever he was, he hadn't appeared there by chance. Clearly, this man had experienced things, possibly the same kind Duong Tu was now facing, and he was clearly much more seasoned. "Sir, did he say anything else?" Maybe. I'm trying to recall." The old man rubbed his head as if struggling to remember. Duong Tu waved another banknote gently. "No rush. Take your time." The old man perked up. "He asked me whether this town has any old sayings or customs passed down. And you said." I told him I didn't know any ancient sayings. "But there is one old phrase passed down in our mountains for generations." He recited slowly, clearly and solemnly. "The first daughter shall never be wed. The second son must remain at the knee. Shallow blessings, short life. A grand home with high gates must never be crossed."